Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. The white media doesn't have any new ideas, and neither do his bootlick minions. Take Byron Allen's LGBT website, the Grio, for instance. They've announced that they're going to start having their own, get this, award show. I don't know who exactly would be honored to receive a crappy little souvenir from Byron Allen, but we all know these award shows are just friends giving trophies to other friends, so nobody actually takes these things seriously. Well, except for some people in the public. And Byron Allen's just so desperate to be taken seriously. He's gone so far as to go ahead and already tell people who the honorees are going to be, though I'm not sure who would be honored. He's invited Dave Chappelle, Tyler Perry, and get this, Norman Lear. Yes, that old white man who made black sitcoms back in the day. I guess Quincy Jones wasn't available. And I also guess we're not going to be seeing John Amos given one of these prestigious Grio Awards anytime real soon now. But that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about Byron Allen. Here you have Byron Allen saying that he's going to be giving people awards in the name of a website that claims to be in black people's interest. And its first honoree is going to be Norman Lear. Because after all, nothing says black media quite like an old white man. I have to wonder, did Norman Lear give Allen his first job or something? I don't know. All you folks, the A-dunce crowd who are helping signal boost Byron Allen's little Supreme Court hustle, where he claimed his lawsuit was the most important ever, and that if he didn't win it, why, it would be back to the cotton fields for us. Well, you'll recall that the Supreme Court gave a unanimous decision saying Byron Allen hadn't met the burden of proof, and in the end, Comcast settled with him anyway, which was what he wanted all along. A settlement meant that he got what he wanted. Now, if he was truly trying to do something that was supposed to help all black people, then he would have said, forget about a settlement. I need a legal judgment in my favor so the ruling would set a precedent. By the way, a bill was introduced last year, the Economic Inclusion Civil Rights Act of 2021. It was introduced, but it hasn't even made it out of committee. It was supposed to be a law that would help lawsuits like the kind that Byron Allen had put forward. And Byron Allen's not using his money to get congressmen to prioritize this bill either. Instead, he's moving on to his next lawsuit, this time against Mickey D's. I'm not making that up. He says that McDonald's doesn't do enough advertising with black businesses. Say, just out of curiosity, with all the lawsuits that Byron Allen likes to throw around, how many of them have been class action suits? Instead, he simply sues this or that broadcaster or this or that big corporation because they're not carrying his show or they're not giving him any ad revenue. The only one who benefits from all of Byron Allen's lawsuits is Byron Allen. And that's fine if he's using lawsuits to get big white corporations to contribute to his company, but don't say that he's doing it for all black people. The only person Byron Allen's thinking about is Byron Allen. If Byron Allen was some sort of disruptor, if he was actually trying to change anything, then why has the white media never demonized or disparaged him for all these lawsuits he keeps filing? You would think that they would have one debunk Byron segment after the other, or at least they would run one such segment, at least on Fox News, but they don't. In fact, none of the white media runs articles attacking Byron Allen at all. Quite the opposite. They routinely run articles lauding him for his latest so-called acquisition. This is the same white media who he routinely sues. What is it that we in the black media keep telling you? If you see the white media putting some Negro on and they're not trying to attack him, there's a reason for that. Though I do think that it's appropriately lunk-headed of him and lacking in all originality or imagination that when he decides that he wants to have an awards show, he does it named after his crappy little website. Come on, at least the source had a magazine. I guess he figured that if he named the award after himself, nobody would want it. He's certainly right about that. Well, for the honorees' sake, I hope there's a really good buffet at the after party or something, because nobody looks at an award from the Grio as being prestigious. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Grio Awards fade away after a few years. But not before they give some awards to D. Ray McKesson, Tarana Burke, Roly-Poly Martin, and a few of those chowder heads on MSNBC, because you know that's coming. In the meanwhile, I can only imagine how long it will be before Allen decides to sue Norman Lear, probably on the grounds that Lear didn't do any business with him or didn't give him a show. Bootlicks are constantly trying to cloak their self-serving schemes in the good offices of uplifting the black community. Now, it's bad enough when wannabe moguls like Byron Allen pull these stunts, but it's just as bad when the white media decides to cherry-pick some operative, make them prominent, and then tell you and me that we ought to look up to them. And that brings me to someone else. And I know this may hit a little note, especially since a lot of you will screech that, well, Professor Truth, you haven't even watched the show. And some of you will say, oh, but the writing for the show is so good. Just stop it. Our next little case study is going to be Michaela Coel. She's an Afro-Briton of Ghanaian descent, and in the white media, she's the current it girl. I guess they figured Cynthia Erivo has run her course. Remember all the articles they used to run lauding her? And why exactly is Michaela Coel being given so much white media praise? For the same reason the white media pretended to think that Issa Rae was hot stuff. Say, for all you bootlicks, dusty dudes, and hood rats out there who are trying to figure out how to get yourselves a quick first look deal from the white media, here's a quick example of what you gotta do if you want those white media executives to return your phone calls.
Pizza.
You came alone?
Yeah.
How long do you say?
I say however long you want me to.
In Cole's show, that she wrote as well as starred in, she shows herself as being head over heels in love with this Italian man who's played by a Moroccan actor, and that being the case, she just cannot get enough of this guy, and I'm sure she's convinced herself that presenting a black woman this way somehow is artistic, but it's not. He's locked her out and won't even let her back in, so I guess that's the end of their little relationship. And she's so desperate to get back in there to be with him, she starts screaming, yelling, cursing the whole 9 yards. She just loses her mind and makes a complete fool of herself all over her zaddy. But this is what she shows herself doing in a show that she wrote and that she stars in. Now, this is copying and pasting the same formula used by Issa Rae. The point is, it's a humiliation ritual. And we need to recognize them when we see them. By the way, that Cole woman, she's going to be in the new Black Panther movie that's coming out later this year. I think she's going to be begging Captain America for a date or something. See, the aspiring black entertainer or would-be celebrity, they know full well what they have to do to get in the white media's good graces. Denigrate black people, particularly black men, and the white media will call you the voice of a new generation. They'll call you a bold, daring, creative talent. And a ton of other phony superlatives. Hey, at the very least, you'll get some white media person to give you a cameo here and there. That's what Hannibal Buress did. He was the stalking horse for the white powers that be. They used him as their crash dummy, their stalking horse, to set up the demonization of Bill Cosby, and he did it for a couple of do-nothing throwaway bit parts in a couple of movies. Sold is soul for a walk-on. And if you're a black woman, just make sure that you present yourself as having some sort of dysfunction or hang-up or insecurity. Thank you very much, Issa Rae. And then make sure that you have some scenes or some episodes where it's displayed that if you can just be in a relationship with a white man, you'll put that guy on a pedestal and the white media will give you rave reviews and call you the next big thing. We all know this. Because Lena Dunham, she was also given all of this phony praise and adulation by the white media. But her show was racist as hell, top to bottom. So what does that tell you? But be it Michaela Coel's TV show or Byron Allen's awards show, you notice that this is all operating out of the exact same playbook. This is the white media setting up a closed loop of self-validation. They put out anti-black propaganda through their studios and their networks. Then they have their own so-called news outlets that they own and control sing the praises of their propaganda and tell everyone that it's the best thing since bread came in a bag. And finally, they have a worthless awards show that they set up and paid for, where they bestow awards on their own propaganda as a way of saying that it has true artistic legitimacy and represents something genuinely valuable within the culture. They completely and thoroughly control what gets made into a TV show or a movie. They control how you hear about it and what you hear about it, and they control whether or not it's held up as something to aspire to. And while all this phony praise and worthless awards may be funny, when you have a society controlled top to bottom by the most regressive and degenerate forces in it, they can turn their fiction into someone else's reality. At the very least, even if a sizable number of black people know that this stuff is phony as a $3 bill, they're still going to have to argue with the black people who have bought into the hype. And this is white power's greatest practical advantage. It's like Jay Gould said, I can pay half the working class to fight the other half. And that's exactly what the adulation and praise the white media bestows on its bootlicks is intended to do. When they release one of these propaganda flicks, they make sure that there's some stars in it to get your attention. And the production values are high. This is meant to make it enticing and attractive. So when you warn people to beware of this or that movie or this or that TV show, at least half of them will dismiss your warning, or they'll tell you to get lost because they just want to be entertained, even though you and I recognize it for the brainwashing that it is. And then, even for those who know better, it's more difficult to resist the temptation of having some prestigious white institution say that the work of propaganda is deserving of an award, especially if they're giving that award to a black person. See, Pookie and Ray Ray don't really watch award ceremonies, but people who are more educated, people who are more well-read and tend to use their brains more, they do watch these things, or at least they're aware of them. And to a lot of these black people, an Academy Award or a Golden Globe represents acceptance by white society. It conditions them to want validation from the white powers that be. And a lot of them will feel that something is missing from their lives if they don't have that validation. This cycle is how racist hate tracks like D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation gets to be considered one of the greatest movies ever made by the American Film Institute. Meanwhile, Nate Parker uses the same name for a movie that actually was a true work of artistic merit, and the white media demonizes and defames him. By now, we all ought to be able to recognize that the only time the white media praises a black person in a movie or a TV show is when it's something that's detrimental to us. If you see them praising some black person, especially one you hadn't heard of before, it's because they're on the take. They choose some person from overseas or someone of, let us say, an intersectional background, and then they talk about them as if they were the second coming. Having pretended to put some black flunky on a pedestal, the white media will then wait to see if black people will circle the wagons around this flunky and defend them. One of the goals of the black grassroots must be to produce sufficient content of sufficient quality that we can finally hold a critical mass of black eyeballs, but also to influence those eyeballs through not only news and opinion, but also through entertainment. And don't discount that idea. You need to see the role of media the way your oppressor does. Under the white media, so-called news and so-called entertainment both are flip sides of the same coin, serving the same purpose. Entertainment is what people come into contact with first. Children don't start off reading Time magazine or watching the nightly news. They start off with fiction, cartoons, sci-fi shows, entertainment. Even when they get older, most adults don't spend their time reading newspapers or watching news. Instead, they spend most of it watching fiction. And the white media uses this entertainment to teach societal roles. White people, particularly white men, are always the lead in these shows and movies, always the ones barking out orders, always the ones who lecture everybody else about their shortcomings. They're portrayed as the most compassionate, the most witty, the most courageous persons on the screen. And then they have some black best friend or sidekick whose sole purpose is to assist said white lead character. The white male leads are the only ones who have agency, the only ones who the stories show as able to get anything done. And this is mentally deleterious, especially to black people, because it conditions black people to think of themselves as merely supporting players in someone else's story, when black people ought to be seeing themselves as the stars of their own. And then later on, people watch the so-called news. And what do they see on the news? Well, the first thing they see are images of black people in trouble with the law. They see white people who are talking about the laws or the economy or other issues of great weight and importance. The only time you see black people even presented halfway positively is during the sports segment. And since this is news, people who watch this see this as an accurate and irrefutable reflection of reality. It's certainly not staged or scripted, right? That's how entertainment and news play off of each other. Entertainment teaches societal roles, and the so-called news validates and justifies these narratives by portraying them as based in fact. This serves to create a self-reinforcing cycle. White power has spent decades creating a media pipeline that will let in these bootlicks, give them 10 minutes of fame — bootlicks aren't important enough to get the full 15 minutes — and then throw them away. In the case of Byron Allen, there's no harm in throwing him a few bones because he's not going to do anything to change the status quo. But just because he's no threat to the dominant society doesn't mean that he's not a threat to us. So when you see these Negroes and the white media's bigging them up, you just remember they're out for self. Neither their stories nor their business practices were meant to help black people. That's why it doesn't pay to let the white media convince you to look up to any of them. The programming and media grandstanding that they do is fake, but the damage they do to black folks who believe them is only too real. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Stone Thug Music, Amir Miller, Gregory Franklin, Deborah Cooper, and Elaine Zanga Zanga. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.